Beyond the GPA, the College Student's Guide to Actual Satisfaction. How to Build a Life That Feels as Good as It Looks by C. Alawi, Ph.D.
Preface: The Student I Almost Lost. I'll never forget the email that arrived at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. The subject line was blank. The message contained 3 words: I can't anymore. It was from one of my best students, a junior with a 3.9 GPA, leadership positions in multiple organizations, and what everyone assumed was a bright future ahead. To the outside world, she was thriving. Inside, she was collapsing. I called immediately. We talked for 2 hours, and what she told me changed how I teach, how I advise students, and ultimately why I wrote this book. I did everything right, she said. I got the grades, I joined the right clubs, I networked, I followed the formula, but I feel like I'm drowning. And the worst part? I don't even know what I'm drowning for. I thought if I just achieved enough, I'd feel, I don't know, satisfied, but I just feel empty. She wasn't alone. That same semester, I had similar conversations with a dozen other students, high achievers, all of them, doing everything right according to the conventional wisdom of college success, and all of them, every single one, reporting the same experience: chronic anxiety, exhaustion, and annoying sense that something fundamental was missing. The system is broken. Here's what I realized in those conversations. We're giving students a broken playbook. For decades, we've told college students that the path to a good life is straightforward. Get good grades, build an impressive resume, land a prestigious job. Then, finally, you'll be happy. But that formula doesn't work anymore. Maybe it never did. What I see on campuses today is a generation working harder than any before them, achieving more by every conventional metric, and suffering at unprecedented levels. Anxiety disorders, depression, burnout, all skyrocketing among college students who, by traditional measures, should be succeeding. The problem isn't that students aren't trying hard enough. The problem is that they're trying in the wrong direction. They're pouring 90% of their energy into the 10% of life that barely impacts their long-term satisfaction: the grades, the credentials, the external achievements. Meanwhile, the massive 40% that actually determines whether life feels good or terrible gets completely ignored. What this book is and isn't. This is not another book telling you to hustle harder or follow your passion or manifest your dreams. This is not a book about how to get better grades, land better internships, or optimize your resume. This is a book about how to build a life that actually feels good to live, not just one that looks good on paper. It's based on decades of psychological research into what actually creates lasting satisfaction. Not fleeting happiness, but deep, sustainable contentment. And it's informed by 15 years of working with college students who were brave enough to admit that the traditional path wasn't working for them. The students whose stories fill these pages are real, though I've changed their names and identifying details. They're not exceptional people with exceptional resources. They're normal students who learned what you're about to learn: that satisfaction is not something you achieve after enough accomplishment. It's something you build through daily, intentional practice. A note on science and stories. This book weaves together scientific research and student narratives because I believe you need both. You need the research to understand that these practices aren't just feel-good platitudes. They're evidence-based strategies backed by neuroscience, psychology, and decades of study. And you need the stories to see what these practices look like in real life, implemented by real students with real constraints, real stress, and real skepticism. I've tried to make the science accessible without dumbing it down, and to make the stories relatable without being prescriptive. Your path won't look exactly like any of the students in this book, but the principles that help them will help you too. How to use this book. You can read this book straight through, or you can jump to the chapters that address your most pressing challenges. Each chapter builds on previous ones, but each also stands alone. More importantly, this book only works if you actually do the practices, not just read about them. Do them. I've included action steps, exercises, and templates throughout. Don't skip them. Don't tell yourself you'll come back to them later. Do them as you go. 5 minutes of practice is worth more than 5 hours of reading. And please, be patient with yourself. These practices are simple, but they're not easy. They require you to question assumptions you've held your entire life. They require you to act differently than everyone around you. They require consistency in a world designed for distraction. Start small, be imperfect, keep going. What happened to that student? The student who sent me that 2:47 a.m. email? She's doing well now. She didn't drop out. She didn't lower her standards or abandon her ambitions. She didn't become some Zen master who stopped caring about achievement. She just learned to redirect her energy, to focus on the 40% she could control instead of obsessing over the 10% she couldn't, to build satisfaction into her daily life instead of deferring it to some imagined future. She still works hard, she still faces stress and challenges, but she's no longer drowning, and she no longer measures her worth by her GPA. That shift from external validation to internal alignment is what this book is about. It saved her college experience. It might just save yours. A personal note. I wrote this book because I wish someone had handed it to me when I was a college student, burnt out and convinced that I just needed to work harder, achieve more, be better. I wasted years on that treadmill before I learned what you're about to learn. You don't have to waste those years. You can start building a satisfied life now, today. Not after graduation, not after you land the perfect job, not after you achieve enough to finally feel worthy. Now. The tools are in your hands. The choice is yours. Let's begin.